We are back, race fans, with a brand new episode of the Nitro Talk Podcast presented by RedshirtFriday.com. And today we have a very special guest, one of the most loved and respected guys in drag racing. We are joined by three-time world top fuel champion, Larry Dixon Jr. How you doing, Larry?
Doing well, man. Doing very good. Thanks for having me on your show.
Well, thanks for joining us. We see you're coming from your shop in Brownsburg, Indiana. We know you've been a busy guy lately. And honestly, you're a guy that spent a lot of time at the drag races as a kid, growing up with your parents in Southern California, and throughout your entire career. But not much has changed today. You just finished up Drag Week, something you've been doing for years now. What keeps you coming back to the drag strip, even after the amazing career that you've had?
I love cars. I love cars. I grew up drag racing. I really wasn't around that, IndyCar or NASCAR or anything like that. But as a kid, with my dad and mom having a top fuel car that literally, because the wheelbase is short enough back then, you could have it in your regular 2-car garage. Lived in the San Fernando Valley, you get picked up from school and you drive out to like Irwindale or to Orange County or something like that for whatever Friday night, / Saturday meet that was going on. And that's just what we did. That was my environment. And then, as I got older, I still love cars. And, I'd go to, back at the time, Ascot was open. I'd go and watch sprint cars, run. And that was, Dean Thompson was the guy that ruled the roost when I was going out there. But if it made noise, I was all in and wanted to do it. And then, once I got out of high school and I'm running around the streets a little bit, had some fun, got into some trouble, but I knew I wanted to try to move my way up to top fuel. Yeah, that was what my dad. That's what my dad did, and I wanted to grow up and kind of be like my dad. So I always kind of had my eyes on that, but whether I could do it at that moment or not, it's always been around cars. My dad, he wasn't against it, but he wasn't doing anything to open any doors either. So, it was kind of not tough love, but it's like, if that's, whatever you want to do in life, you go get it, and if you want it bad enough, you'll figure it out. So, it took a couple of years, and then for me to be able to get on a pro team just on the pit crew. And it wasn't even working on the car. It was cleanup. Like I just washed parts and oil pans and, floors in the trailer and, whatever it took. And probably maybe 6 months into it, where I actually finally got to start actually working on the car and being on the crew more so. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. The team I worked for, Larry Minor, which was a really strong team in its day, but I worked on his personal car, and he didn't run all the races. So it's like you prep the car and you do all this stuff and you go up to the race, and then he's like, "Yeah, I ain't coming this week." So you're like there, but you're not working. And I'm like, man, this, it's fun being out here, and you're still getting paid, but I want to learn and I want to be part. I want to race. And so I ended up leaving that team, went to work for Frank Bradley for a little while, and then ended up, actually a friend of mine ended up leaving Prudhomme's team, and they had an opening, and the Snake and Mike Clover gave me a call. I grew up in the same town as they had the shop up in Northridge, and so I ended up going to work there. But I didn't really think. I don't know what I thought, but I didn't think I'd be working there for 20 years. He does funny cars for, pretty much all of my life. And I just thought he'd keep doing that. Well, a couple years into that, then he switches to top fuel, and then he retires from the seat. And it just that, the opportunity to test, and they gave me a really good opportunity. And I didn't do anything dumb when I got that opportunity. And so it just kind of just snowballed. But it wasn't like I had this master plan. I was just kind of going with the flow, and it just, as these opportunities presented themselves, I was able to take advantage of it, and it worked out.
In your days as a crew member, you mentioned Larry Minor, you mentioned Don Prudhomme. We hear a lot today about guys having to live on the road. You're far away from your families. You're going highway to highway, state to state. Did you ever have moments earlier in those crew member days where you kind of were losing a little bit of your passion, or was it always there and getting stronger by the day?
Well, it's yeah, way different nowadays. You're not on the road, provided that you live in, for the most part, Indianapolis. You can kind of come and go out of here. But when I started at Prudhomme's, late '80s, guys didn't have shops. Nobody had that kind of budget, and you literally were just. So when we packed up and left for Gainesville in March, you were on the road until you'd come home after Dallas the beginning of October, and you try and get, if there was a break in the schedule, you try to get home one or two times during that spell. But literally, you pack a bag and you lived out of that bag from hotel to hotel to hotel. It was kind of carnival, gypsy, however you want to say it. It was that kind of style, and that's how it was. And then maybe by the second or third year in. Lee Beard with Gary Ormsby, they had a shop in Indianapolis, and Prudhomme and Beard had a good relationship and talked about just coming and going. So we ended up doing that and got an apartment, and that was it was nice just to have a base. And then as things snowballed on, like the cost of living was a lot less there. If a guy wanted to buy a home, and know
Wow.
that he's and as it is now, a lot of teams are here. So even if you move teams, you could still be in that same town. You don't have
Right.
to uproot your wife and your kids or your life from that standpoint. And it's made it it's made it a viable career. Not just for if you're a driver, or owner, or crew chief, but the crew guys as well too. I just, and the amount of work that's involved with the cars are so much more now than it was when I started. When I started, there was 4 of us on the road, and that was it, and that included the crew chief. So there was and so you got 2 rooms. Well, at a minimum, there's 8 now. So so there's there's opportunity for jobs and careers in the sport. So it's neat to see the sport come along. They're good and bad to it. The good is you can make a career to it. The bad of it is your cost to go racing is so much more.
Right.
When I started at Prudhomme's, his budget was less than $1 million, but it was 16 races and there's only 4 guys on the team. Well, now, now there's, well, there was up to 24 events and you've got 8 people on the team, a minimum. And then you've got social media and press and just it just goes on and on. And then your shop expenses. So it's way more than double the cost to be able to go racing now versus what it was, say 25, 30 years ago. So it's good and bad points to it, but Indy's, I really dug Indy, and because I spent my summers here for so long, and then all of a sudden it just made more sense to get here. And then when I got married and we're going to start a family, it just made more sense to just be somewhere where I can come and go out of for the entire season.
Right. And one question I have is, you work for Don Perdome for so many years. At what point of your time with Prudhomme as a crew member did you ever feel that opportunity was coming to drive a top fuel car, or did you ever have your eyes set on other opportunities out there? Like, were you always kind of looking around or listening to what was going on, or did you always think I'm going to be loyal to Don until I either get the shot or I don't?
Well, it's there may or may not have been an opportunity there. For one, I never thought that he would retire. I thought he'd be like Chris Karamessinis or John Force, just never get
Right.
out of the seat. So I didn't know that. But you're seeing back when I was coming up, the guys, a lot of people from the alcohol class were moving up to top fuel, and those guys was. Well, it was all 3 Petragon brothers, and then it was Corey Mack, and it was Blaine Johnson, and Pat Austin, and you're seeing all these people, race alcohol, and then they move to top fuel. And here I'm on a top fuel team, but I'm not getting any experience, and the little bit of conversations, and I didn't have a lot. Gosh, I could probably count on one hand how many times I talked to Snake about driving top fuel. But he can't. You can't go to a Fortune 500 company and sell somebody that has no experience in the top, like Prudhomme didn't even know if I can drive or not. And these are things that you need to know when you're selling yourself or your racing team to a for millions of dollars. So
that's a good point.
I think on that side of things, I got a more guidance from Roland Leong, which was friends with Snake, obviously, since the early 60s. And he had a lot of drivers go through his. And he used Mike Dunn as an example of Mike Dunn was crewing on Roland's car, but he couldn't let Mike Dunn just drive his car. He needed to get experience in something else to kind of prove himself before he did it. And so that's kind of when, for me, he gave me the nudge or shove or however you want to look at it, Roland did, to go drive alcohol. And it just, as a season, I'm going to go back to, that would have been 1993. And we weren't having a great season. And it was like, you know what, this might be a really good time for me to go drive alcohol and see. And so I went and did it. And there weren't even any guarantees I'd get my job back, because it was like they filled that position. And if you're not working for Snake, if you're not fighting his battle, he ain't doing you any favors. So I didn't even know if I'd ever end up back there. But at the end of the season, I knew I could drive a car. I was basically out of money, needed to go back crewing again, and so I was looking for a job, crew-wise. And at that point, when I talked about him not having a good season, his entire team had quit at the end of the year, and he was hiring Wes Cerny. He's going to have one last season driving the car, and he was planning on being done. And those were the stipulations. When I talked to him, I'm like, he's like, you can't even talk to me. He goes, go talk to Cerny about going to work. So I went and talked to Wes, and so Wes hired me. And we all knew we just have 1-year jobs. Like that was pretty much it. There wasn't any talk of him staying racing or putting somebody in a car and keeping it going. I mean, that kind of stuff really didn't, at that point in time, it really didn't happen. When guys were done, they were done. Like they just packed up shop and went and did something else or did nothing else. So that's kind of how it was. And then how the season snowballed. They wanted to go testing one time, and Snake had a sponsor commitment, couldn't do it, and trying to get somebody to drive the car. It's got a license. Nobody's got a license. And then all of a sudden it was a heated conversation between Wes, Cerny, and Snake. And it's like, and I'm over washing parts. And it's like, why don't you go get that kid his license, and you guys can go test anytime you want. And I'm listening to that going, right on, and so that's really basically what happened. So, a couple races into the season, we're at Gainesville, and I got fitted for the car before the event, and got in the car and made some runs with it. And I, again, didn't do anything dumb, and ended up, made a couple nice runs, and one right on national record. And it was just quicker than Snake had gone at the time. And so I was excited, not just because of the license part, but because we had a car that could compete with the Coletta team, which was dominant at the, you're talking about 1994 season. So, but then, not to put words in his mouth, but Snake said, like he was comfortable being outside of the car, watching it go down the track, not thinking he needed to be in the car to go do it. And so then I think that's when the thought, to like be able, Skoll wasn't coming back to sponsor. So he needed to find a sponsor. And I know how that goes. And most people know how that goes. If you can find a sponsor, you got to ride. Well, if I had a sponsor right now, I'd have a ride. So that's just kind of how it goes. But at the time, one thing, led to another, and Miller Brewing Company was looking to get back in the sport, and it was a good, Snake had a good sales pitch on it. You've got the established brand of Don Prudhomme, and you've got this young guy, which is, they're trying to sell beer, and they're not trying to sell beer to 50-year-old men. They're trying to sell to the generation coming up, to the new drinker. And so you wanted a young guy driving the car. So they got the best both worlds, and it worked really. It worked good for me. It worked good for the team because we had a sponsor for 12 years, and then worked good for Miller too because we were able to get a couple of championships and really take care of them on the racetrack and around the country.
And what a rookie season you had. You win in your second career start. You double up at I'm sorry. You double up at Indy. You win the Big Bud shootout. I'm sorry, the Budweiser shootout. So you're winning Budweiser's money at this point. And not to mention going into testing that rookie season, you run career numbers, uh, ET record breaking numbers, and you also have a crash. So talk about the highs and lows of that first season. Did you ever feel a lot of pressure, replacing the snake in that first year?
I got a lot of questions at that time about replacing him, and I never really thought about it in that standard. I'm driving his car, but I got him as a driving coach too. So like,
Right.
I mean, one of the greatest field drivers ever, and so it actually takes pressure off of you because I
Wow.
wasn't stepping into his car. I've been on his team for 5, 6, 7 years by that point. So it really. No, I didn't think about that. It was kind of us against the world, from that standpoint, try to go out there and race. I knew we had a great car. Snake finished number 2 in the points. And like if I knew he was driving, we could challenge for a championship. So like, I'm trying to hold my end of the bargain up with zero experience. So, I mean, I didn't have, after I got my license in '94, I never drove the car again because like we had the car sorted out and
Wow.
so we just ran. So it was like preseason testing and I was struggling driving, getting the car down the racetrack. I actually got some tips from, of all people, Dick LaHaye, who was crew chief of Scott Coletta, who we're trying to beat at the time. And he was the one that helped me um, with driving the car down the track. And then, we go to Bakersfield. Car runs really good, runs, right at national record. And then it, cut a tire, blow a tire, crash a car. And it's just, our sports like that. You talk about being humbled. There's peaks and valleys to it. I mean, you can, you can do great. I was with, gosh, we went preseason testing one time with Snake at Bakersfield and we ran like 299 or some great number. And everybody's thinking we're going to go to Pomona and run 300. And you know what? We went to Pomona and didn't qualify. Like it's such a humbling sport. So you never, like I was never one to talk or do, I let the
Right.
scoreboards at the time slip talk for you. If you're doing good, you ain't got to tell anybody that. If you're doing bad, they also know it too. So you just need to get to work, and that just keep my head down and keep grinding and just try and do a good job. If I try and do my part and everybody else on the team's doing their part, we'll be there at the end of the day or the end of the year, and that's just really, really how I've tried to live.
And at this time, your family and your father, your mother has to be extremely proud just by you getting this opportunity. You work for it. Your dreams are becoming reality. What did your dad say to you, throughout those seasons, those earlier years? And did he have a lot of coaching help? Did he help coach you a lot in some of the tougher times?
Well, my dad never. Um, Family was very supportive, but my dad, gosh, when he quit racing in '79, cars were running five. I think the fastest he'd gone is like 589 or something like that, 250 mile an hour. So I mean, definitely a different world. 15 years further forward. So but I got to talk to him, and then again, like points wise and championships and racing and that kind of pressure, he never he didn't do it at that level. He kind of did it more for a hobby, and he just loved the sport. And I mean, I talk about my dad. I give him credit for for the love of the sport. Like he gave me that love of the sport, and I think trying to do it as a career. It was guys like Snake and Garlitz and Shirley. Where my dad's driving through the night to get us all home so I can go back to school and he can go back to work. And then there's other people, Snake, Goose, Roland. They're not going home. Like they're going to the next race. And I just thought, man, that would be so awesome to just never go home and just race all year long, and to be able
Right.
to get that. And but really seeing their eyes. So some of the pressures that came along with it, I think Snake was definitely helpful with that. Roland LaHaye, You know, your crew chiefs that you had at the time, Dale Armstrong, you know, worked a lot of years with Kenny Bernstein. So it was, you just pick things up and you just try and watch what other people do. And I just, you know, again, you just go back to trying to do your best and hope it's enough.
In that 90s era, you mentioned some of the drivers that you got to line up against and were your biggest competition. You talk about the Colettas, you talk about uh, Blaine Johnson, Dale Armstrong. Like, who, if anybody, did you see as a rival in that time? Like, is there any driver you really lined up against that kind of rubbed you the wrong way at all in your career, or that you kind of bumped heads with off camera that you always just wanted to beat up on?
Well, I've never, for the most part, I don't think I let anybody get under my skin. You know, like it was just a, you just go in and try and do your job. I talk about drag racing. You know, it's your lanes are independent. So it's like if you go up there and you cut a light and you make a quicker run, you're always gonna win. Like you're like all the time. So you're so in control of your own destiny. Guys that you're racing for championships or the top guys, those would be the ones for sure. You know, like started out, it was Scott Coletta, and then from Scott, it went pretty much right into Gary Selzy. You know, from that standpoint, and he had his run with Allen, and then but through all of that, in the dozen years I was with Miller, it was Kenny Bernstein. You know, the Budweiser thing. You know, working for Miller Brewing Company, they put your phone call on Monday consisted of how'd you do, you know, like who won the race and how'd Kenny do, you know, like that was like no matter what, like they always want to know how the Budweiser car did. So it put a lot. It gave you a real. I mean, it's in the beer world, man. At the time, it's you know our guys are hanging up banners and the Budweiser guys are cutting them down, and it's just like I mean, in their world, it's just cutthroat, you know, in the grocery stores and the bars and the retailers and all that, just as cutthroat there. So Kenny through all and gosh, he gets so mad at losing to us. It kind of ended up making it fun to beat him, you know, like some of the times. And then, you know, like we raced. Gosh, we won 3 Bud shootouts, you know, during that span. And you got the Miller car, and Budweiser never won under my watch. You know the shootout. So those kind of things that you trying to do good for the company and represent them as best you can. You know, I have a lot of great memories being with Miller. You know, obviously you see the car. We did the throwback car at Indy a few weeks ago, and the Dick Strupp that was in charge of the Genuine Draft brand at the time when they signed me. Yeah, I mean, he came out to the races over the weekend, Labor Day. So it was just. I'm still friends with a lot of those people. You make a lot of friends across the country, different distributors and stuff, and it's just had a really, really good time. I know I'm getting way off of where your question was, but
no, you're fine.
But then later on after Kenny, then it was obviously Tony Schumacher, because he had such a run with Allen and then on his own and stuff like that. But that Army car, it was fun. I could tell you, like through the early 2000s, where it was like either us or Tony won Indy, and that being just such a prestigious race, and that race means the world to me, and obviously to him. You grow up in the sport like he did with his dad. To have that 10-year run where it was either one or the other, and I love that. I take pride in that. Wish I had a few more, but I bet he does too. So who knows?
Well, it's never too late to get a few more U.S. Nationals wins, as I'm sure you know. So,
no, I get it. This is a forgiving sport from age. You know, like I mean, you see a guy like John Force. It's in his mid 70s, and you know he's on pole at ZMAX. So you absolutely could still get it done. You got to have a great racehorse and a great team behind you. You know, and everybody's got to work together. So it's, I mean, never say never, but I'm, like I'm not passing out resumes to test the waters.
So today, the two main people you hear about are the drivers and the crew chiefs. You had the one and only Dick LaHaye in your corner for many years, um, in the Miller car, and he was in your corner for two back-to-back championships. How important was he in your career, and how important is that the driver crew chief relationship, and how does that spill over to the rest of the guys on the team?
He was tough. I mean, he treated me like his son. So like, I mean, I loved him like a dad. He took really good care of me. He was very methodical on how he went about things, and I mean, you just really try and break down a season by run. And when we raced with LaHaye, it was a season long championship. There wasn't, you didn't reset the points and throw everybody back in. You got 12 guys that got a shot at a championship. It was like you started out at the Winter Nationals at Pomona, and that first qualifying run, those points matter like at the end of the year. So it put a lot of, I mean, you can make it a big deal, or you can leave it as simple as, let's take care of this one run right in front of us and make a good run, and then let those add up, through the course of the weekend, and then
Right.
through the course of the year, and broke it down. And when he came to work for us, and he thought that we had everything it took, he said this to us and the crew, and he says, I think we have everything it takes to win a championship, but we're probably not going to do it right. It takes time to build it. And like his first full year, we finished third. Second full year, we finished second. Got more round wins than anybody else and not won a championship that year. And then the third year, come back and win, and then did it again. And then kind of did a rebuilding of our whole engine combination, and then came back and finished second again. So like, he's just, like his words were strong, but he had everything it took to back him up. And so, there's points of time that I loved him, and there was times that he just made it so frustrating. And gosh, it was just like the teacher in school that just rode your ass, and you like hated him at the moment, but then when later on you're like, I love that guy. Like, he made me want to be a better person, and he wanted me to be a better driver, and he made me a better driver. I mean, I finished number one in the reaction time standings under his watch, and I take pride in that. Like, I wanted to bring that to the table, and like, if we're not going to win a round or a race, I didn't want it to be because of me. So you're just, again, whether I was just doing cylinder heads on the car or driving the car, you want to bring everything you can to the team and hope it's enough.
When you look back at those two championships you guys had won together, is there any, between 2003, is there one that sticks out the most? I mean, of course, that first championship has to mean the most, because by this point, you're 7-8 years driving full time. You get to win a championship for Don Prudhomme. You have Dick LaHaye, a guy who's been there for you, like you mentioned earlier, sort of a mentor before he even was part of the picture. So how important were those two championships to you and your career at that point?
Well, it's important. I mean, I guess when we lost the championship in 01 to Kenny, I had somebody, does that make you? Somebody asked me, does that make you not as good a driver? Like, by not winning? And I'm like, well, gosh, like, I don't think so. Like, I think I tried just as hard. We just didn't have things go our way, but it doesn't make me feel I'm less of a driver from that standpoint. But
Right.
but if you're out there, I'd never been a part of a championship team, crewing or anything like that. So you still want to get it done, and to be able to come back the following season right out of I mean, we won the Winter Nationals, and so we led the points from that point literally for almost 2 years straight. We came back the next year, won the championship, but we also won the Winter Nationals at the start, first time back to back for somebody in Top Fuel, and I don't know, maybe ever or something like that. So we led, from the start of the season again. And so what I liked about the second one is that it wasn't a fluke, like, not that anybody thought that, but if anybody was to say it, you don't have to listen to it, like, you felt better about it. But it just, we just stayed on a strong run, But I think when we were running on that certain combination, towards the end of 03, Alan Johnson went to work for the Schumacher at the time, and so you could see that they were going to be on a run at that point. So they had the budget and everything it took.
Right.
So you needed to be stepping your game up, where our car, I think, would go down it'd go down the return road. It was so reliable going down the racetrack, and those guys were throwing bigger numbers out there, and they were repeating, and they're getting more consistent about it. And so it just it would have taken a reset, but by that point, I think LaHaye kind of got us back up going again. We finished second in the points, and then after that year, he decided to call it a career. He'd been on the road racing for so many years, and you save your money and you want to do things and have fun, and I understand more so what he's talking about. Once you get out of that 24 race deal, I mean, there's a lot of things to do in life,
Right.
and when you're trying to be the best out in drag racing, it's very consuming. There's nothing else going on. Trust me, like, you're missing out on all your kids' sporting events, and if you're going to them, then you're not giving enough to the car and the team. So it's a lot, and so I don't have any regrets or anything like that. But I'm really happy that the time that I've got right now, where I could watch my kids play basketball and soccer games and sectionals and all kinds of fun stuff like that. So like I feel I've got to do everything, on
Right.
and off the racetrack.
And all good things come to an end, kind of like you mentioned, Dick LaHaye retiring. And the end of an era was coming with Don Prudhomme Racing. And you kind of sensed that. You knew that was coming. And you get the opportunity of a lifetime in 2008, 2009. You get a phone call from Alan Johnson. You hear about this new creation of Al-Anabi Racing, and the opportunity arises for you to be a part of that journey. How important was that phone call, for you wanting to make the next step happen and wanting your career to go the way you wanted it to?
Well, I knew at the time, we had Miller Brewing for 12 years, and then we had SkyTel for one, and then we had Skoal, / US Tobacco, US Smokeless, and went from a 3-car to a 2-car to a 1-car team, and then towards the end of that season, US Tobacco, it got sold to Philip Morris, Marlboro, basically, and so when they did that, it kind of, all the tobacco companies had signed that master settlement agreement to where they weren't going to do, I won't say all of them, but they weren't going to do any advertising in sports. Well, Skoal and that group, Copenhagen, they didn't sign it, so like they weren't a part of it. So they were out there still doing it. What you saw was when they got swallowed up by a bigger company, now they got to follow those rules. So like it was going away, and I could just see, the amount of money it took to run the team. I just needed, like, if I was going to do this for a while, I needed to be looking around, and Prudhomme had made it clear to me that like he didn't have any interest in helping me after he retired, on that side. So it was kind of like I needed to fend for myself. So it was
Right.
kind of, you're kind of looking around, and this deal's all coming to an end. What are you going to do? Well, that opportunity presented itself, so I ended up leaving Snakes a year early to have that opportunity.
In 2009, you start the team with Dale Worsham, a guy who's been a respected guy in all of drag racing for as long as anybody nowadays. He's driving the funny car. You're driving the dragster. I know at that era, there was plenty of drivers willing to park their own operation just to get a crack at that ride, at those two rides. So being Larry Dixon, the driver you are, you mentioned you battled with Tony Schumacher for years against Alan Johnson. Now you're getting the opportunity to team with Alan Johnson. And in 2010, it comes all the backlash that you may have had from it comes to fruition. You win a championship together. Alan Johnson's first with Al-Anabi Racing and the country of Qatar. Talk about that championship and that 2010 season.
It was neat. I mean, 2009 what was tough. I think starting as a brand new team, because you're starting with everything brand new, and which obviously that's good. But then the bad is in your parts, the inventory, clutch discs, like be more specific on that. Not having an inventory of used clutch discs, where like, gosh, like my car here, I've got discs in my car right now that are like used discs that you run along with your new discs, that are like for say 2014 or something like that. So like, okay, 8-year-old clutch discs, right? So when you start a brand new team, you don't have any used clutch discs, and then you're Alan Johnson, and not all the other teams are really excited about selling you an inventory of used clutch discs that you're taking away from your own car in your own inventory, and then to go feed the competition, so to speak. So it so that was that. I think that was the probably the most challenging part of 2009. Towards the end of 2009, you're making used clutch discs, but then we got an inventory of used that we got, and so by the end of the season of 2009, we lost that championship by 2 points. But let me tell you what, like everybody in our team was wishing the Winter Nationals was the next weekend, because it was like we were building up, and then so like we roll into 2010, Winter Nationals, I think it was the 50th Pomona at that time, and we went in there and won, and just like had a great, won 12 races and 12 final rounds, and they all weren't pretty, but they were all wins. So it was really fun to be a part of that, and I hadn't won, with this whole playoff format. So it's like we've got a 4 or 5 race complete race lead, leaving Indy, and then they take all them points away, and then they box you all up. And it's like, well, if you've got a good car, go out there and do it again. So that's what we ended up doing. And then by the end of that 6-race playoff deal, we had a 2-race lead again. So it was really neat to be a part of that. Just such a dominating time. But I'm going to say from the team side of things, there was a little bit of distractions involved, and like after we had a great run, a couple of years, 09 and 10 with the dragster, the funny car that Dell was driving wasn't having, it could hit, win, but it wasn't challenging for a championship or anything like that. And then that's when Khaled's like, if we can have one dragster win 12, let's have 2 dragsters and win 24. And you're thinking, okay, that might work in Formula One. I'm not so sure about drag racing, but we, so they parked the funny car, and then ran the dragster, and the funny thing is we won 12 races again combined with the 2 cars. I think Dell won 8 and I won 4, and he won the championship. So we're able to get that title. But then by then there was I don't even know a lot of everything that happened. All I know is Dell went on to go do his own deal, and they moved on from me as well, and went on and did other things. They got Belushi and Langdon, and a couple of years later they're both gone. So like it just it was fun to be a part of, but not for a long time, but for a good time. So.
You're right about that. I'm here. Yeah, that's right. That saying goes, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. And you've had some wild rides in your Top Fuel. I'm sorry. You've had some wild rides in a Top Fuel car over the course of your career. from blowovers to even doing a 360 in Australia. I mean, what goes through an experienced driver's mind when you go through accidents like that?
Well, I mean, going back to before I even ran my first race, blowing a tire and then wadding the car up and putting one together, it just lets you know, like, it can happen really quick. And if you're in a really good car, a really quick car, you're going to be on the leading edge of things that could or couldn't happen to you. So, yeah, I've always just been really respective of my safety equipment. I think my crash at Memphis, car broke in half, fly through the air. That one split my helmet. But at the same race, Gary Selzy was trying a Hans device. He didn't like it, but then Prudhomme looked at it and said, "Hey, maybe you ought to go look at this because it split my helmet." And for the most part, I was okay. Concussion, broken leg, and all that. But bad things can happen. I mean, if it didn't, then we'd still be wearing T-shirts, and no
Right.
seatbelts and that kind of stuff. So you have to try to be on the front side of all of that. So again, just making sure that regardless of what the minimum spec is for the category that you're racing in, try to see what's the best safety equipment available. I mean, I ran drag week last week, and I got a street car that runs 10 flat, and I'm wearing a Hans device. And there's probably people thinking, what a knucklehead wearing a Hans device. But let me tell you, if you've ever crashed, do you know how much you would pay to have the Hans device at that point in time? So I'd rather have it, not need it. And so it's just trying to be, again, on the forefront of that. I remember, gosh, my father-in-law was racing pro stock truck, and he crashed and he chipped all his teeth. And he says, "Hey, Larry," he goes, "you wear a mouthpiece?" And I said, "No." He goes, "You ought to look at one." He's like, "I chipped all my teeth." And I'm like, wow, never thought about it. So I went and did it. And then for that crash at Memphis, Tony Schumacher had a pretty bad crash then. No mouthpiece, and he chipped all his teeth, and it had to get his teeth capped, and mine were fine. So it was like, it just trying to be ahead on all of that stuff to going back to what Wes Cerny would preach, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And again, really try to be on the forefront. That crash in Memphis, I'm thinking as I'm talking, you had GM, flew one of their safety guys out, which was Tom Gideon, which NASCAR ended up hiring him away from General Motors just to be able to take care of their people and to be able to learn from their crashes. Tom comes in, he looks at my belts. He says, why don't you have a 6-point or 7-point harness? I'm like, I didn't even know that was a thing. And it wasn't a thing. It was like in the rule book, you couldn't at the time for a Top Fuel car. So like I got the rules changed, and this is in 2000, right? And then, and I'm wearing it, and you're preaching to everybody about it, but everybody's thinking what we got is okay. And then, then we have a terrible tragedy like, Eric Medlin. And then all of a sudden it's mandated. You have to have a 6 or 7-point harness, and I'm, it's frustrating that some of this stuff comes along and you can't get it mandated right then and there. But
right.
But at least it is now from that standpoint. But just trying to be safe and knowing that it can happen at any time. And then that one crash that I had when the car broke in half at Gainesville in 2015. Like for all practical purposes, I was okay. Had 2 fractured vertebrae, but I raced 2 weeks later. But everything worked. Everything that we learned from the 2000 wreck, and not wanting to crash test all your safety equipment, but it all worked. Sent my helmet in, my helmet was good, and came back and I raced with it again. So like, it's just, you really got to be up on things, whether there's a fatality involved or an injury or something like that, any incidents involved. Like, I'd always want to know what's going on. I mean, I can point to stuff on the car that I drive now still, like that, from Shelly Anderson, floor pans and stuff, because she had a bad fire one time. And it's just like, you just want to learn from this stuff so people, so you don't have it happen again. Because if it happens again, you're a knucklehead, So it's like, I don't want to be the knucklehead.
I think you are the one and only, the best guy to have started this business venture you're on. But Nitro times two, the two-seater. I mean, all that you've just explained and you've talked about, um, it's like being on the front lines, being on the field. You've experienced this. So now with this new business you got going on, the Nitro times two, the Larry Dixon experience, I mean, walk us through that process of what kind of mindset you have to, you know, your passengers, let's say, what kind of mindset you need to have your passengers in when they're getting ready to go for a 10, 11,000 horsepower ride in a drag down the drag strip with one of the greatest of all times.
So most of the people that I'm riding with probably haven't gone over 100 mile an hour themselves. So it isn't like they built up and then all of a sudden they're getting in the top fuel car. They're, they might have won the ride from a drawing or a raffle or something. So, so I, like I'm involved in, this, suiting them up and I'm walking them through and I'm talking them through, like, and that I've had, and you're explaining to them that, top fuel cars, bad things do happen sometimes, like
Right.
I've been through a lot of them, but you know what, I'm still here. And it's because like, I look after my safety equipment. It takes care of me and walking them through, wearing the Hans device and, we have a lid lifter, that wasn't, that just came along a few years ago, like if you had a possible spinal cord injury and you're not sure whether the person's had any damage done, you don't want to be pulling their helmet off their head, right? Because it's pulling on their neck. Well,
Right.
Stan 21 came up with this head sock that's based, I mean, it's called a lid lifter, and it's just got these two dog ears that go on the outside of it that hang out of your helmet. And then so if you needed to take it off, you pull on that, which actually pushes the helmet off your head without ever pulling on your neck. And I'm just like how awesome. But you're talking these people through all this stuff because they should have some butterflies, whether they want to own up to it or not, a lot, and it's like you're trying to, talk to them and let them know, like, this is supposed to be fun and I want this to be fun. And, if bad things happen, this is all the equipment that's going to help take care of you. And so that's pretty much what you go through as like you're wearing your, your undergarments and the socks and fire boots and just everything that you got, to let them know that, everything that we have. And I mean, it looks like you're, gosh, you look like the Michelin Man when you come out of that trailer, because it's like you're wearing moving blankets and most people haven't done all that stuff before. And it's like, because all that stuff's there to protect you, if you need it. And so, that's it. And it's, I enjoy that part of it, walking them through, helping them, strapping them in and just making sure that, I'm not sending them, down the track by themselves. I'm going with them. And it's like, so,
Right.
I'm not going to send them down the track in anything that I'm not doing because I'm doing it as well. So, it's just, it's supposed to be a fun time. Really, like after I lost my last ride at Vandergrift's, it's like, what do I want to do with my life? And like I love drag racing. I love that I got to make a name for myself, I guess, in the class. And like, how cool that, Mario Andretti, he gets to do it. Well, what about this? So then it's like, then you do your due diligence on, whether that could be a, a possible opportunity, a business opportunity. The car's safe and you can get it insured. And at the time, the sanctioning body was excited about it. And so I went ahead with it. Then of course, when it got done, there was a couple people that weren't excited about it. But the genie's already out of the bottle. So like, okay, I'm not there. I'm going to do it somewhere else. And that's kind
Right.
of
Right.
like literally I just had this morning, I mean, I had I'm a championship owner, multiple championship owner call me up about, running somebody through the two-seater, and it's, I think we've been doing it for over, 5 years now, which, that the 5 years went really quick. And, like we haven't given hundreds of rides, but we've given 50s of rides. And so like, it's been a fun deal, and to be able to share that with people, because that there's, unless, a lot of people don't want to drive a Top Fuel car down a racetrack unless you really like that's your thing, but to be able to feel that G-force sensation and the speed of the car and not have the responsibility of getting it to the other end of the track.
Right.
I'm your guy, from that standpoint, and if you really like it, I've had a few people do it more than once, and now the talk, maybe I'll go drive a car, and it's like, in some of your, it's not a cheap date to go for a ride, I mean, it's over $10,000. So whoever you're talking to is probably doing okay, but then, some of the conversations is, well, maybe I might want to go for a ride in a Top Fuel car. Maybe I might want to have my own Top Fuel car. So you're, maybe not a Top Fuel factory of sorts, but you're helping the process. You're bringing more fans to the class and the sport that might not necessarily be there.
Right. I had an opportunity of talking with Gary Selzy one time, and he absolutely loved everything about the Nitro two-seater. He said it needs to be at national events, and he had a great point. In between rounds to put on a show, maybe a fan gets the experience of a lifetime in between rounds to go down a drag strip that everybody's going on. The opportunity you've given so many people, like you said, it's not in the hundreds yet. It's not in the thousands yet. I guarantee it will get there. But talk about some of the experiences you've had with passengers. I know you got to drive and have the late Dale Russell's father as a passenger. And I mean, how special was that to be able to take somebody who's been involved with drag racing, had their own family involved, and you were able to give them that experience? Because without Larry Dixon's without Larry Dixon's two-seater Top Fuel experience, I mean, this wouldn't be possible for anybody to experience nitromethane. I mean, you can't do this in a funny car. I mean, maybe you can, but I don't think there's any real way you could do this in a funny car. So a Top Fuel dragster, I mean, kings of the sport, right? Yeah. Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, with Mr. Russell, that was emotional for me, because I'm friends with Daryl. Had talked to Chris, his brother. He wanted to do this for his dad. Didn't want his dad to know about it. Like how he even got him, from Texas to Michigan, and that's a story in itself. But got him to the track, and then like, hey, you're going for a ride, and he was like, what? And then I'm gonna say 99% of the people that I take for a ride, they are so like animated and so their adrenaline's up and everything about the ride. It's exciting, like you just 0 to 250, like in 3 seconds and all that. And they're just, and he was way more subdued. And, get out down at the other end of the track. You want to get out of the car? No, he just wanted to sit there. You took his helmet and all that. And I want to get out when, tow the car back. No, I just want to stay there, like, and stay in the car. And it was just like, I'm getting emotional talking about it right now, because it was like, it gave him an opportunity to, be close to his son, what his son did. And, being friends with Daryl and what that family had to go through. It's just, it was probably on that ride back to the pit area that I'm like, how can I have some people be that mad at me for doing this car and go out of their way to try and, I ain't gonna say blackball, but kind of, I mean,
right.
do everything they can to remove me from it. When I've got something like that I've done something so personal for someone, and I have so many stories. I have one guy that when this car debuted at SEMA and he knew it was going to be over $10,000, he works at a grocery store, and he did the math that if he saved $65 a week, it'd take him like 3 years, like almost to the day. He reached out and said, Larry, like, I want to go for a ride, and so like that. And so we line it all up, and he goes, well, I didn't know about that at the time, saving the money and all that. He's like, who are you bringing with me? Oh, I'm not bringing that. How can you not bring anybody with you? Well, to be honest with you, he goes, this is for me. He goes, I've gone to a lot of races, and I don't want anybody. I don't, I don't come from money, and I don't want people to think that I should be doing something different with my money. I want to go for a ride. I want to enjoy the ride. And I'm just like, wow. And so I find, before he went for the ride, like he ended up bringing his mom with him, because his mom would go to races and stuff with him, and did that. But like, again, like, I'm not trying to make war, like, I'm just trying to make, it's a top fuel experience, and it's not for everybody. It's for, the people that want to do it, or can do it. Gosh, there's so many. That same time that he did that, and he drove, and he's, whatever. At that same event, I had a group of people like fly on their own personal jet, like fly in, and they get out of the jet and they get shuttled over to the track, and it's like, lifestyles of the rich and famous kind of. We're gonna go in top fuel cars and all that. And then at that same deal, I got a guy that saved for 3 years to go for a ride in the same car. It's like, I don't know how further, like a Spectrum could fly on that same day that brings both of them people. Both of them wanted to go for a ride, and they both loved that experience and said it was the greatest thing that they'd ever done in their lives. Both of them, one in a jet and one in a, regular car driving themselves to the track. So like, it's not for everybody, but the ones that want to do it, we have availability.
That is awesome. I'm going to link below all the ways you can get in touch with Larry Dixon. Opportunity to do this. I mean, you'll never get an opportunity. I doubt anybody's going to want to even attempt to try to do this. Larry Dixon has. Larry, what you've done for the sport alone should give you the credibility and to do what you want. And I'm glad you've stuck with this, and you've never let anything bring you down. You've always kept with this program, and it's still going today. So all you fans listening that want that Larry Dixon experience, I mean, it's not just sitting in a 2-seater dragster going down, the drag strip at 300 miles an hour with any Joe. You're going with Larry Dixon. I mean, 62 national events, 3-time champion, broken dozens of records throughout his career. I mean, there's no better driver to do it with.
It was kind of the thought, you got Mario Andretti in the IndyCar, hey, maybe, for drag racing people, I got, some credentials to be able to do it.
Right.
And it's not just the ride. I mean, it's almost the day at the track, for most of the people that you're going for a ride, they obviously love drag racing. So, they're getting to step, inside the ropes, in the pits. Guys are working on the car. I mean, we run that, I got two cars behind me here, but it runs the same drivetrain. It goes from one car to the other car. So it isn't like you got some old 1950 Hemi in your top fuel car and go. It's where I'm at with it is, it's like, if I'm selling a ride in a top fuel car, by damn sure you're gonna go ride in a real top fuel car, and it's gonna, we put a clutch in it every run, and it gets a rack of pistons every run, and we've had runs where it's smoked the tires right at the start, and then we've had to give that person a ride again, because we didn't follow through on what I'm selling. So like, it's a top fuel car. It's a top fuel experience. All the goods and bads with it. It takes a long time to do that. You got to wait for the weather to be good. You got to wait for a racetrack that's good. All of that, it's all part of the top fuel experience.
Absolutely. It's not a turnkey program. It's all the modern equipment, all the modern stuff. Everything you do see at a national event today, you're going to get with that Larry Dixon experience. So one more question I have for you, Larry, before we let you go, is for this year's biggest race of the year, for this year's US Nationals, you are on the entry list, but not as a driver. This time as a car owner, with rookie Will Smith making his pro debut. How did you enjoy that experience? I mean, you've been a rookie in the seat before. You filled big shoes in Don Prudhomme's, and you've gone on and have had a great career. I mean, what was it like giving another kid an opportunity. And a guy like Will Smith, a guy who's paid his dues, he doesn't come for money. He's been out there on his own for so many years, and then he gets the opportunity of a lifetime to drive for Larry Dixon. And then with that paint scheme, we see it, we get a little peek of it in the back, but just to tribute your rookie season. And I mean, having those two worlds collide, what was that whole weekend experience like at this year's US Nationals?
I enjoyed myself. I've known Will for 10 plus years. I mean, he was an intern on Shannon Jenkins' Pro Mod car when I was with Al-Anabi, in the late 2000s. So we you know we go back, and so like I followed his career and everything that he's doing, and I we got talking early in the year about trying to do some races, and it didn't pan out. And so it's kind of like, well, what about doing a one-off race? So that's kind of what we worked on. And Indy's a really tough event because of the amount of entries. I mean, yeah,
Right.
you go to other tracks, and they're lucky to have 16 cars. You go there and there's 25, and I knew there was going to be a lot, but I still thought that we could get enough runs and that we could show well. And I think from my standpoint, I wish we would have ran. I don't know that we were prepared for a 375 bump, but we were shooting to run in the high 370s. One reason or another didn't do it, but I had fun. I really did. And going to Indy with a rookie driver, and I wanted to. A lot of those people hadn't seen me since
Right.
all the controversy with two-seater and everything else that goes on. So it's like I wanted to remove myself as far away as possible. So like that was Will didn't even know about the throwback paint scheme. So like
Wow.
I went, but I thought about going to Indy. That was the car that I, paint scheme I drove in my rookie year, and we're bringing a rookie to Indy, and I thought it would be fun, and enjoy, and I got a lot of good feedback from a lot of people, and it was fun, and I thought Will like through licensing and through Indy and qualifying runs, I don't know how he could have done any better. I think he's put his name on the map that he's a top fuel driver, and he's wanting to do what I did, get out there and do it. Doesn't come from money. You got to figure other ways to do it. Whatever way is your way. Like, I mean, he's got a marketing degree, so he's working that angle. Me, I didn't have any degrees, like I worked on the car and worked my way up through that way, and he's doing it that way. And he's, it doesn't, everybody's got to, those 25 people that were in a top fuel car at Indy, each one of them has a different story on how they got to sit in the seat. And, like whatever your way is, you need to exploit it and take advantage of it and do the best you can to be able to get where you want to go. And so I thought he did good. I enjoyed myself. I know he's working on things for next year. So who knows? Maybe hopefully we'll be able to go back out there again. But for that month, him running, getting licensed and all that, I thought he showed well to the other competitors in the class, and it took him out of the grandstands and put him on the field. He's not a kid that wants to do this. He's a kid that has done it. He's got a license. He's been in an event. He can do it, and he showed really well. So hopefully it will lead to more opportunities for him to be able to get back out there.
What type of sorry, my throat's choking up. What type of advice do you give a guy like Will Smith who's making his debut? And was there a moment that hit him that you thought, yep, that was my surreal moment I had too as a rookie driver?
for me, it was get my name on the entry list. It wasn't even a little bit with the name on the car was cool, but and that's why I made sure we got his name. Like even when we licensed, I put his name on the car. I think that's really important for an identity that he's got his name out there. But seeing my name on the entry list, and the same for him, I think when he showed up at the shop earlier in that week when we're still laying graphics out on it to make that happen. Um, yeah, that part of it is fun. For me, I try to have an answer for whatever question he's got. My eyes are older than his, and I've seen a lot of paths. A lot of them he's not going to have to go through. A lot of them nobody's going to have to go through. But if there's things that I can help him along in his career, yeah, or even other people. I mean, gosh, even even okay. So going back to when I drove Al-Anabi, and then Del Worsham goes from funny car to dragster. He had driven Top Fuel, right? So and then me talking to him about the car. Del Worsham signed my license, literally my Top Fuel license. Don Prudhomme and Del Worsham, and then it was a little surreal talking to Del Worsham, and then have him go on and win the championship that season. It was if it wasn't going to be me, I was glad it was him. So from that standpoint, you just try and talk. You help them out. Those cars are really quick. They're really fast. They're not very forgiving. It's like a bull or it's not even a bucking bronco. It's a bull, because it's like if you do have one wrong move with it, you'll get the horns, in the worst way. And so I don't want that for anybody, and anybody I can help with that, I'm gonna, whether they're on my team or not. I love the sport. I want to see anybody that wants to have anything to do with the sport, to be able to be successful in it. So again, just old eyes. If I can help feed them, that's what I'm trying to do.
And literally no better guy to learn from or to have a mentor than Larry Dixon. I mean, what you've accomplished in your career, you're a three-time a three-time Top Fuel world champion. You've swept the Western swing, one of only a few drivers to do that. I've mentioned the 62 national events. When you look back at your career, when you put the helmet up for good, when you put all things aside, what is it that Larry Dixon will be proud of the most?
Oh, I don't, my legacy. I don't know if what am I proud? There's things that have come along in my life. I'm proud. If I didn't have the sport, I wouldn't have met my wife, and I wouldn't have my kids. That, gosh, I can't imagine my life without them. So those are things I think about. I think Daryl Russell, when we lost Daryl and his wife, he didn't have insurance, and then we did an auction, and the auction raised over $500,000, and that all went to Julie, to pay off house and take, those are things that I think about. I just, kid growing up in the sport, I love going to the races, and it's whether I'm standing on the starting line for my friend Steve Johnson or for Will Smith in my car. I'm a fan of the sport, and just I like being a part of it at whatever capacity.
Well, Larry, thank you so much for taking your time. I don't know why my voice is so choppy. This is why I'm lucky I just recorded it and I could re-edit it. So
there you go.
But Larry, thank you so much for taking the time with us today. I know it's during the week. You got a lot of stuff going on. You got race cars to keep going. You have a family. I got to thank your family for, everything as well. What you guys have been through. Your kids are blessed. I mean, you guys are literally, if every fan in the stands, which a lot of them know, but if every fan in the stands know what a guy like you has gone through, what a guy like Torrance, I mean, there would be no enemies, right? You wouldn't have people that hate you and love you. I mean, you got to love a person for who they are and the heart and the will and desire. So thank you so much for taking the time, for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. It's been something I've been wanting to do for a long time. And the opportunity you're giving me today, I'm not driving in your Top Fuel dragster, but the opportunity just to interview you, to be on the show, to share your story is truly amazing.
No, I appreciate the words for sure, and the platform to tell my story. A lot of times, the shows that you're on while you're driving full time, they don't allow you to get your voice out. People don't know that personality. They don't know who you are and what you stand for and stuff like that. But shows like yours letting people on, it gives them a platform. So I think it's great what you're doing, and I appreciate you having me on your show.